All right, and welcome to Hattrick Sports Talk. After what has been just a wild week with the election and everything else going on in the world, I know it's been heavy on everybody, but hopefully we can bring you a little bit of joy as we are talking about one of our favorite things, sports, which we haven't really gotten a chance to really deep dive into over the last week with everything. So hopefully this will bring you some joy. That is always our hope, but especially for this week. As always, I'm joined by Shane and Brandon. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, doing well. How about you?
Good. Brandon, you good?
Yep.
All right, let's get started. We have a really fun slate of news, some funny stuff, some pretty crazy stuff, just all over the map. This is a pretty good news week considering that pretty much the biggest thing on is the NFL. But we begin with breaking news from this morning. The Red Sox have decided to rehire Alex Correa after the sign stealing scandal in 2018. The Red Sox have decided to rehire him. So we're gonna start there today. Shane, you have a pretty you're very confused.
That's what? Why?
I mean, he won him a ring. Whether it's fraudulent or not is up for debate.
I know, but they sucked this year.
Oh, they were horrible this year.
I'd get him out of there, get a fresh start.
Maybe fraudulent is not a good word for this week, but you get what I'm saying. Either
Well,
way,
yeah.
uh,
No,
it,
no, it is.
um,
Was.
yeah. But Brandon, your thoughts on Correa, um, getting rehired by the Red Sox?
Um, it's a it's a little weird that they would re-sign him after firing him for the reasons that he was fired for. But look, I mean, I don't really think there's any other solid options out there currently.
I do agree with that, but there is something that doesn't. I don't know. It just feels like a mess. Honestly, I don't understand the point of rehiring him. I don't get yeah, Brandon's absolutely right. What options are there after a shortened season, all this other stuff? But to just rehire him, like, is he really going to make the team that much better? I mean, the Red Sox were honestly abysmal this year. But Shane, go ahead and finish up with your thoughts there.
No, yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't think he really is gonna turn that organization around by any means. I mean, it's it just feels like kind of a desperation move.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, like Brendan said, it's like, well, there's no one else, and this guy's already here. We're familiar with him, so I guess we'll just keep him around. But it's kind of like, is that really the right move after after the whole cheating scandal, and then of course after um, this season when they were so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So um, yeah, that's an interesting move to say the least. But well, whatever works for them, I guess. I don't
it's
know.
it's really interesting from from an ownership group standpoint. Excuse me. Um, this Red Sox ownership group looks kind of dead in the water right now. From all the reports I'm hearing from out of Boston and all these things where these decisions do feel like desperation. I mean, we talked about the Mookie Betts trade even and how that felt really bad. I mean, that was a colossal failure, clearly, considering the Dodgers won the World Series. There is a significant issue with the ownership group, and I think that also rears its ugly head here with the Correa hire as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. They're doing something strange in that with that organization
Mm-hmm.
because um, excuse me.
Bless you.
Because I just dusted my pillow off here. It's probably going all over. Anyways, um, but yeah, no, because I mean that's like, I mean I never understood the Mookie Betts trade at all. Um, I still don't. They clearly lost it. I mean that's worse than like. I mean that trade is worse than D Hop and David Johnson.
Yeah,
But
it's even worse than the James Harden trade, which we just had an anniversary for last year. or last week, excuse me.
So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird, but I mean, I'm not expecting. Let's just say this: I'm not expecting much out of the Red Sox in the next few years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's move on to the NFL now. These primetime NFL games have been abysmal this year. Let's just put it out there. They've been so bad. Do we even have a reaction, Brandon? Do you even have a reaction to last night's game at all? Was there anything substantial that stood out to you?
No. It wasn't a game. It was just like watching someone play Madden and just like kicking the crap out of the other player.
Devontae Adams felt like a Madden player yesterday for sure. Shane, do you have anything substantial to add here?
Well, that's the thing. I was I was sitting there watching. I only watched the first half of that game.
Same, pretty much. I stopped in like the third quarter.
Yeah, and my dad and I were sitting there watching it, and I said, he looks like he's playing a college defense.
Yeah.
Like he had all the time in the world. He was just sitting back there, and he was just like throwing the ball, and it just looked like he was just doing a nice lob in the backyard, but then it goes 50 yards to Devontae Adams and
Valdez Scantling too, of course, that 52-yard bomb.
Right. And then it's just like, oh yeah, okay. And he's just kind of like out there, just kind of half-assing it. And he's like, oh, there's a guy. Okay. Oh, touchdown. Wow. I was like, well, really? This is okay. Yeah. No, I think that just goes to show a couple of things. For starters, when Aaron Rodgers has his confidence up, he is excellent. And also, or just playing with a lead in general, but also injuries are really killing the 49ers because, I mean, you just look at who they had out from injuries and also trades, whatever. And, they just looked totally out of it.
Yeah, but I would argue, I don't think the 49ers would have been, I don't think injuries in this game would have helped the Niners. Like,
Brandon, is your mic okay? Your mic's kind of glitching out.
I just don't think they would have helped the Niners that much.
Even with it being fully healthy?
Yeah. And the reason I say that is because, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo isn't that good. Let's be honest. Like, he has not been that good. And that Packers defense last night was like, they were not even putting in that much effort. So
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is like those teams played twice last year. And the San Francisco defense, when they were healthy, they completely shut down Aaron Rodgers in that offense.
But it's not healthy, so
that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. Like, if they were healthy, I disagree with you, Brennan. I feel like they would have had. I feel like Rodgers would have had at least some trouble.
Yeah, but San Francisco, didn't they give up? Didn't they deal some of their major pieces on defense in the offseason?
Well, they dealed one major piece on the trade deadline, which we'll get to. But he didn't even play that much. Quan Alexander, who we'll get to in a bit.
And then that other guy who they got rid of in the offseason, what's his name? Not Ford. But
they got rid of DeForest.
Yeah, they got rid of Buckner. Who was a big aspect of their defense last year.
And is an even bigger aspect of the Colts defense. He's been underrated this year.
That's my thing. They got rid of their ability to really put pressure, and I mean,
and especially now that Bosa's hurt.
I was really shocked by that trade to get rid of or getting rid of Buckner. I thought they were, I mean, yes, they would have had to put a lot of money into him, but
yeah, I mean, they got Javon Kinlaw, which we'll see how that works out in that deal, basically for exchange in the draft. So we don't even know. The jury's kind of still out on that one. In terms of Quan Alexander, Javon Kinlaw's development. But yeah, so I mean, for me, I So my reaction is I think we need to now. Obviously, Russell is the clear MVP frontrunner, but I think we need to put Aaron Rodgers at least in the conversation, at least somewhat. I know that this game wasn't a great contributor of that necessarily, but if you look at the totality of his season, you look at how this offense is played, considering that Green Bay has looked at Will Fuller, which we talked about, they are not necessarily completely confident with their receivers, and this offense is still playing as well as it has. I think you need to put Aaron Rodgers in the MVP conversation just a little bit. Secondly, Brandon, you mentioned the cap issues. I mean, a major part of those cap issues is Jimmy Garoppolo's contract. So if they let him go, again, as we talked about with Dak and the Cowboys, it's kind of a domino effect with all these trades that they made. I think a huge reason why they're in cap trouble, and then obviously there are other reasons. Jerry McKinnon has a pretty big deal as well, but Garoppolo's contract is certainly part of it. And I felt like the Packers defense, yeah, they didn't put in that much effort, but it's not an amazing defense. So I think that worries me when we get to playoff time. There's going to be better offenses that they're going to play in the playoffs. So that's something that concerns me. But long term for the Niners right now, what are you looking at? Like, is it just what do you do with Garoppolo? Do you keep him at this point? Like, I have a hard time deciding to move Garoppolo, to cut him. I mean, the cap penalty isn't that bad to cut him. Are you both at a point where it's time to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo and figure something else out, especially that they're probably going to have a high pick this year at this point?
I think so. I mean, I think there's a lot of guys that you could trade for that would work better there. One guy obviously being Dak. I've even heard Aaron Rodgers from a few people. I don't think he's going to leave Green Bay.
He's not going to leave Green Bay, but he's a San Fran guy and all that stuff. So I would expect that type of rumor.
Matt Ryan, I've heard, because Kyle Shanahan came from Atlanta, obviously. That would be interesting. They obviously worked, but who knows what they could do? Or they could draft a guy, maybe like a Trey Lance or something. Who knows?
They might be in position to get Fields. I think Fields is going to be an interesting spot up the board. Well, how high do you think the Niners are going to be picking?
I mean, that would have to be like a top 5 pick, probably.
Top 10, I would say. I don't know if. Well, actually, yeah, maybe top 5. I don't know.
Because like the Jaguars would be like the 2nd or 3rd pick, and they're probably.
You think the Jaguars are gonna move on now too?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a whole another issue in itself, but
yeah. Minshew is out this week. I believe Jake Luton is supposed to start this weekend. So
watch out, everyone.
So that's gonna be interesting. The Brannan, what do you do if you're the Niners with Garoppolo?
Well, you can't exactly afford to have him as your second string. And let's be honest, none of the quarterbacks on San Francisco are any good.
Yeah. Mullins will be the star of the rest of the year as it stands. So
Mullins is pretty terrible anyway. So
he's okay, but he's not like.
I mean, he's not starter exactly. Well, but here's the thing. Like, I actually heard something interesting. I forget who was talking about this, but there's a difference these days between starter and franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Franchise is like Hall of Fame level. Starter is like, oh, you're good enough to start. It used to be that you would have starter level guys getting franchise tagged. Now you're like getting the franchise label. Nowadays, if you get the franchise label for a team, you are a Hall of Famer.
Well, it depends because
you're gonna be you're either very close to the Hall of Fame or you're gonna be a Hall of Famer.
So, I mean, there are only a couple. I guess you're right in the sense that there are only a couple of teams. Let me think about this. So, Matt Ryan in Atlanta was a franchise guy, but you probably would list him as the starter place. But he was technically a franchise guy these days. Yeah, I guess that's part of it. Is that for a bunch of these guys like Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, for example, those guys were starter material back in the day, and now I guess are less known as franchise guys. So yeah, I think that's a fair point.
But think about it, like Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, franchise guy. Seattle, Russell Wilson, franchise guy. Tom Brady when he was in New England, franchise guy.
Hall of Famer, I would say.
Right, but that's the point. Like Hall of Famer, you think Hall of Famer, you think franchise. So it's. I mean,
then where do you label? Hang on. Then where do you label? I mean, I guess it's kind of early, but like for example, Deshaun Watson, you'll label him as a franchise guy in Houston, but you don't label him as a Hall of Famer.
I don't know if I would label him. I mean, he's like that weird. I mean, he's getting franchise money,
which he should.
I mean, but like, should he though? Like, he hasn't exactly brought in results.
The coaching staff has to work with favors.
True, I guess, but.
And then, like for example, the young guys, Herbert's been playing at least so far at a Hall of Fame level, but of course he's got to win some chips for that. But I mean,
still a starter for me.
Still a starter because of his young career. So there are a few caveats, but your overall point stands in the fact that they're to be considered really like a franchise guy,
right?
A team to basically win Super Bowls, because obviously to be like, a Hall of Famer, you got to win some Super Bowls.
Basically, my point is the quarterbacks that are like the consistently like long term having their starting job secure are the ones who are consistently like whose careers are on a pace to, there are some odd ones out like Matthew Stafford or
or Watson or Ryan.
And I think in those cases, as you say, they're players who have suffered from having unfortunately bad staffs around them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would argue that if Matthew Stafford had a better coaching staff around him in his career, he would be a Hall of Famer.
We've made that argument throughout the show's history.
So
I mean, yeah. Let's go to the 10 o'clock games here. Shane, I'll start with you. I think there are a couple good ones here, but I know there's one in particular that we're all looking out for.
The one we're looking for, I assume, is Baltimore Indy.
No, the one below that.
Well, both of them, I guess.
Yeah. But you can start with Baltimore Indy.
Well, sure. I mean, this is another interesting matchup for both of these teams. They've had quite a few in recent weeks, but because I feel like these are the teams that both of them would have a hard time beating, if that makes sense. Because you look at Indy, they've got a really good defense, but they, a lot of that came from the fact that they played some pretty, weak offenses early in the season. Now, recently, you're seeing them against, teams like, even like Cincinnati last week when they almost lost. I mean, that, they're not amazing by any means. And so, that makes me wonder, okay, well, how's their defense going to do against a Baltimore offense that is inconsistent, I guess?
I think that's the right word choice.
I mean, they put up a lot of yards, but they don't exactly. Sometimes they do, but then they don't always get points or vice versa. Whatever, I don't know. So I just wonder how. I wonder how that's going to turn out. How Baltimore's offense is going to do, and I think it'll be a real test for both of them. And then on the other side, I mean, I think that Indy's offense is a little bit limited by Phillip Rivers.
Got to throw the ball deep. He did it last week. I got to see it again. Let's keep it rolling.
And that's another thing with Baltimore's defense is, can their front seven step up and get pressure to him and force, Phillip Rivers to make bad throws or whatever, because I think that's going to be a key for their defense. And, I think if they can do that, and if Baltimore can just drive, eat the clock, I think they could win. But overall, I think I like Indy.
That's how I'm feeling too.
But
Brandon, what's your thoughts on this? Sorry, Shane, but Brandon, what's your thoughts on this? Do you think the Colts have an upset bid here?
I think the Colts are having a good season, but I don't think the Colts have played anyone like the Ravens. Like, the Ravens are better than I think we give them credit for this year. I think
you said last week you don't think they're that good.
No, I said I thought that their starting quarterback wasn't that good.
Defensively, they're a
I'm not
beast.
saying their team is not that good. Their team, honestly, has some of the best pieces in the league. And if you're playing against the Colts, I'm not about to trust the Colts and Phillip Rivers. So, yeah.
I'm trying. My apologies. I am trying to look up the odds for this game in particular. But let's move on to Seahawks Bills. Definitely for me, the main game I'm looking forward to in the 10 o'clock hour. Brandon, I'll start with you. Jamal Adams coming back. This is probably going to be. We might take a couple of weeks, but we're finally going to start to see this real Seahawks defense that we've continuously talked about. Brandon, go ahead on that.
Yeah, I actually think that this is going to be a rough day for the Bills. I just think Jamal Adams coming back, I think, is going to put pressure on Josh Allen. I just don't think Josh Allen does well with pressure. I think and again, like, our offense, I mean, nobody's been able to stop the Seahawks offense really that much this year. And I mean,
it's a top 5 offense. We're not debating that.
Right. And my point is, like, I think this is going to be the first game where we really start to see the Seahawks. Well, I guess you could argue it second game where we start to see the Seahawks defense kind of like start to tick up and up and up, hopefully. So
interesting betting odds for both of these games. Seahawks Bills right now is Bills +3, which is interesting. And then Colts +1.5. So those are some interesting odds for these two big games. Shane, I'll go to you. Of course, you're kind of the Josh Allen expert here, especially that you have him on your fantasy team. So you've been kind of rolling through the ups and downs. Does this game concern you from Josh Allen's perspective?
I think so. I mean, it's in recent weeks, he has looked really bad against, I mean, let's be honest, like middle tier defenses. And, I think that, it's like we've been saying. I mean, I think the Seattle defense, when they're healthy and when they, especially if they play like they did last week, I mean, they have the potential to be like a top 15 defense. And especially now with Jamal Adams back and with Carlos Dunlap, that's going to create a pass rush, which is what they really needed. And so I just think, and then, you have, I mean, Jamal Adams, he's like two defenders in one, basically. He's all over the place. And then, if you just have Dunbar, someone on Stephon Diggs, then you have the other Diggs, Quandre.
It might be Shaquille Griffin. He might be back.
Oh, really?
He might actually be back for this week.
Well,
if I remember correctly. So,
anyways, regardless, you get somebody on man coverage for Diggs, and then you have the other Diggs playing in like zone, and then
not related, by the way. I don't believe.
What?
The two Diggs, Stephon and Quandre.
No, I don't think they are. But if you just do that, then I think Allen will be, because he's definitely a bit, trigger happy. He tends to make ill-advised throws every now and then, and so you get that pressure on him, and then he'll probably make a few bad throws, and I mean he's probably going to get picked a couple of times, if they just have the right coverage. So yeah, and then I mean Buffalo's run defense for starters is terrible, so good thing that's happening while all of Seattle's running backs are having their health issues. But
we'll see if Carson comes back. I wonder if I think he's practiced in some limited fashion this week, if I'm not mistaken.
Today he is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of up in the air, but
yeah,
it could go either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he has a midfoot sprain. I'm surprised he's even considering coming back so soon. But
EJ Dallas played really well in replacement last week.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think this is an easy game, or not easy, but I think the Seahawks win it by 2 touchdowns probably.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. The actual Stephon Diggs brother, Trayvon Diggs, who I've been raving about for the Cowboys, they go up against the Steelers. I don't think we need to focus on this game. We kind of already know what the Cowboys look like, other than the fact that Ben DiNucci won't be starting. It's the AAF standout. I believe he was the AAF yards leader, the Alliance of American Football yards leader, in Garrett Gilbert. No, Garrett Gilbert. So DiNucci will be out. He will not play. He got benched. So it's either going to be the AAF standout Garrett Gilbert or Cooper Rush, who's been on their practice squad and on their 53-man, barely making it to 53-man for like the last 5 or 6 years. So that's going to be rough, especially against the Steelers defense. 2 interesting matchups that to focus on. Brandon, I'll go to you. The matchup first of 2 young quarterbacks in the Dolphins and the Cardinals. You've been really impressed with this Dolphins defense in particular.
Yeah, I think they've done a really good job. I do question how well they're going to be able to shut down the Cardinals. I mean, they're basically going to have to do a similar thing that they did with the Rams, and just make them make mistakes and capitalize off of it.
How do you think the 2 quarterbacks are going to perform, particularly Tua? He didn't have the best of showings, but also the defense did most of the work. Do you have higher expectations for Tua in this game in particular?
Oh boy, I don't predict good things for Tua in this game. I think he's going to get picked a couple times. This is a bad game, I think, for a rookie quarterback to be coming into. I mean, one of the best things the Cardinals have going for them on defense is their secondary. And like Tua didn't exactly show much good last week.
Shane, I'll go to you for that as well. Expectations for Tua. Are you worried about this matchup against Arizona?
Well, I'm not worried about Arizona's defense necessarily, because I mean they're really not that good, and that's the thing about last week. I mean, LA has a good defense, obviously, but the thing is, it's like Tua, I feel, didn't really need to do a lot, because obviously, like we were saying, Miami's defense carried that game, but also it's just, how do I say this? I don't think I don't see Arizona's defense as like a particular threat to him. I do agree with Brannan. That secondary is probably going to pick him off once or twice. But it's, I mean, I see both of these teams scoring around 30 points, just because, Arizona has, I mean, they have a very explosive offense. They just do. I mean, Kyler can beat you several ways. I mean, he's he's really taking advantage of all the weapons he has, and he himself is a weapon with his feet. And not to mention, they have pretty good running back help as well. So, I could see them scoring, 30 points, 40 points. But then, you look at this Miami defense and it's like, well, maybe not. I think it's most likely that I think if anything, it probably ends up being like 28-21 Arizona, or 28-24 maybe.
Yeah,
something like that. Like a medium to high scoring affair.
I'll go ahead and preview the Raiders and the Chargers. These are two really good offenses. Of course, we talk about Derek Carr and Herbert. Herbert's been, I believe, dealing with an injury. I believe he was limited in practice yesterday. He should be okay. I'm pretty sure he should be okay to go. But if he is, this is going to be an offensive showcase. Really interested to see what defense kind of jumps out the page here. The Chargers defense hasn't been great, but hasn't necessarily been perfect. Of course, Brannan and I spoke about this on Sunday. This team just has to finish in the fourth quarter. When you play teams like the Raiders and these weird, AFC West matchups, you always have some of these weird close games where a team kind of blows a lead. So hopefully that's not the case for the Chargers. But if they blow another one, we might have a discussion about Anthony Lynn moving forward, I would think. I'll have you both preview the Saints and the Buccaneers. Brannan, I'll start with you. We have a couple receivers coming back in the fold. Of course, Michael Thomas looks like he'll be ready to go. But also on the other side, we see the return of Antonio Brown. How do you feel like AB is going to affect this offense, not only in this game, but long term for the Buccaneers?
Yeah, I think Antonio Brown, he'll either be a really good addition or he'll do absolutely nothing. I think it'll kind of be. I personally think he's going to do good for the team. I think he's as problematic as he is off the field. I think he still has a lot of skill. And I think it'll be a really good addition to the Buccaneers. I think this game will be pretty good because these are both pretty good offenses this year, and it should be entertaining to watch.
Shane, your thoughts on Antonio Brown, and I'll ask you about the Saints side as well.
Yeah, I think I definitely think he's a good piece for this offense if he can, act, or if he can keep his act in check, right? Because, and I assume he will, at least for now, because the guy's walking on eggshells. That's no secret, just with everything that's happened and with how hesitant Bruce Arians apparently was just to even let him in. So, that's I think that works in their favor in terms of how he'll behave. But just as a player, I mean, he's really good. Obviously, it's it's yet another dynamic receiver for Brady, who can do deep balls, but also is a great route runner, catcher, whatever, everything. So I do think he's good for them because Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, as good as they are, have been kind of up and down throughout the year.
So, and injuries as well.
Right.
Don't forget that.
So, I think it's good for them just to have a consistent guy who's always there, whatever, assuming. And then, for the Saints side, are they having Michael Thomas back?
It seems likely. He's been practicing. I don't have an update on him if he practiced in full today, but I think he's been limited in practice the last few days. It's looking more and more likely he'll play on Sunday.
Because I think that definitely makes a difference in this game. I think if they I think if they have Michael Thomas, they are competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't, just looking at Tampa with AB in the mix now, I think they win this pretty easily.
I will also say a couple of things. In terms of game script for Antonio Brown, at least for right now, Arians has said that he's going to play about 20, 25 snaps. That's also why I asked about sort of the future with Antonio Brown. But also, it's an interesting thing on the Saints side because Drew Brees has been limited in practice this week with shoulder. Alvin Kamara has been limited earlier in the week in practice. This Saints team is coming into this week very banged up, so it does also change a couple of sort of how they have prepared for this game with a lot of their stars dealing with some nagging ailments as well.
Yeah. Well, and, I mean, when we saw these teams the first time, Tampa was, it was Brady's first game with Tampa, so it wasn't going to be perfect, obviously. And, they were in New Orleans. Not that the crowd is a big deal, obviously, but because there is none. But
there was none in that game. They've
right.
since added fans there, thankfully, or
Right,
just
but
a small amount, of course.
They still had to, Tampa still had to travel. They weren't playing at home. It's still an adjustment. It's still, there is still somewhat of an advantage in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But now this time they're at home. They almost lost last week, so they're going to want to bounce back and really do well. And I mean, I think this is a team. This is a game that both of these teams feel they really need to win for this division, especially Tampa, considering they lost the first one. So, with that in mind, I think that they will come extra prepared. They'll probably take advantage of the fact that New Orleans is a little banged up. No, I think they'll probably get the win here.
Brandon, your thoughts on the Saints, of course, having all those injuries. How has that changed your approach to this game with the Saints having a bunch of their major guys being limited in practice this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same old story every week. Like, no one's had full teams, I believe, it seems.
There's been a couple times, normally on Thursdays and Fridays, but other than that.
Yeah. But the Saints have kind of struggled in terms of players being on the field. But I think it'll make for a fair game because both teams are kind of beat up right now.
And then, Brandon, I'll also ask you about this Monday night game. We have some Patriots news that we'll get to, but I think one of the more interesting things, at least with this Monday night game, obviously it's the Jets. How can it be that interesting? But I also feel like the one piece that could be important is how the Patriots sort of, I guess, game script or how they really approach this game, because they are also in a position where they're kind of down and out. How, if you're the Patriots, do you approach playing this really terrible Jets team right now?
You approach it as if you can't do anything wrong. I mean, any team playing the Jets should approach it with the feeling that as long as you play a clean game of football, you should be able to beat them. It's that simple.
Yeah.
The Jets have nothing. They have nothing going for them.
Yeah, pretty much. I think you are right about that. I think, especially with the amount of penalties the Jets have, Sam Darnold being what he is now, I think you're definitely right about that. Let's get to, I believe, some trade deadline news here. So there's been, let's see. So trade deadline. Yeah, so the Chargers have sent Desmond King to the Titans in exchange for a 6th-round pick, and the Quan Alexander deal was Quan Alexander to the Saints in exchange for Kiko Alonso and a conditional 5th. So keep in mind, this trade deadline sucked. I mean, we were talking about AJ Green, we were talking about Matt Ryan, we were talking about Julio, we were even talking about Michael Thomas a little bit, even though that was kind of debunked by Sean Payton in a really funny GIF, which was funny and enjoyable. But other than that, was a terrible trade deadline. But the biggest problem I had overall with this trade deadline was players like Quan Alexander. Really, Kiko Alonso's the best value you can get. Desmond King, a 6th-round pick. Carlos Dunlap. Brandon, I'll go to you first on this as well. Why do you think some players, these big name guys who can be productive, their values are just so low? Why do you think that is?
Because there's really I don't think you can balance anything this season. It's like, I think a lot of these guys who could be productive, I don't think a lot of teams are wanting to shift players this year because it takes, like, I think it's like a week.
Yeah, it's a week. It's a week,
Right.
basically a bye week for the player to travel.
Right, exactly.
And COVID testing.
So I think a lot of these teams are like, nah, it ain't worth it. But it's also interesting because you get players like Carlos Dunlap, who in a normal year might not have been picked up by the Seahawks, who's getting picked up. So, I don't know, you're right. It is kind of weird.
Shane, your thoughts on all these like name brand guys pretty much? I mean, they're still productive, but pretty much name brand guys going for 5th, 6th-round picks, at least some starter caliber linebackers, but in the case of the Alexander trade. But why do you think the values have been just extremely low for these quality players?
I mean, this is just me speculating because honestly, I have no idea. But, I'm just looking at the teams that are doing these trades, and it seems like a lot of them are guys that are saying, this team's not going anywhere, get me out of here, I want to win. And so they're just kind of doing what they can to get them out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But that wouldn't be the case with Quan Alexander. I mean, that was mostly a draft, or that was mostly a salary cap issue, but he still went for a 6th.
Well, yeah, or 5th or whatever. Yeah. No, I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but I mean, for like Carlos Dunlap, that was clearly the case. Because, Pro Bowl defensive lineman. What do we get out of him? Oh, a backup offensive tackle. Oh, okay, great. So that's, I think that's definitely probably part of the reason. But I mean, this is just a weird NFL season in general with, with the virus and everything else happening. So I don't know. It's strange. I mean, I couldn't tell you why. It's all just speculation for people like us, but that would be I would guess that's at least part of the reason for lots of these trades.
Mm-hmm. And then, okay, so here's our first weird and funny, in some way funny, but also, I don't know. This is just a weird tweet by Takk McKinley, former 1st-round pick of the Atlanta Falcons. He's been wanting to be traded for about 2 years now, and he posted this on Twitter this week. These Atlanta Falcons turned down a 2nd-round pick for me when I requested to get traded last year. The same Falcons turned down a 5th or 6th from multiple teams when I requested to get traded. I only have 17.5 career sack, and he used the clown emoji 3 times. And then the coaching staff of the Falcons basically said he's going to get punished for this tweet, as he should. Your guys' thoughts on this? Because this was just a bizarre tweet, also kind of funny with the clown emojis. Brandon, you go first. Your thoughts on Takk McKinley?
I mean, look, like, I'm trying to figure out if this tweet is better or if Carlos Dunlap's tweet was better. Because, like, they're both saying the same thing. I don't want to be here.
But the clown emojis, though.
Oh, the clown emoji is great. Because the Falcons are being clowns. Like, first they turned out a 2nd-round pick. Then they turned down a 5th and a 6th.
They should just trade him when he had the 2nd round pick. I mean, it's pretty good value for a 1st round pick. Shane, your thoughts on this tweet?
I mean, I don't blame the guy, honestly. It's kind of funny, just the fact that he just totally roasted his own team on Twitter of all places. Oh, jeez. Yeah. No, honestly, more power to the guy. Yeah, if he wants to do. Oh, what a mess of an organization that is. Yeah, interesting.
It's clear that the Falcons weren't happy with this tweet, according to all reports from the coaching staff.
That's understandable.
Definitely a weird one. I mean, they should have traded him, before the deadline. Just as Shane said, a lot of these guys that need to just go out, let him go. But Takk McKinley, I believe, will be a free agent this offseason, as they didn't accept his 5th-year option last offseason, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully he'll get out there soon enough in a few months. But clearly, again, these as we talk about with the Falcons, it's really been a mess. And then we'll have another funny tweet, I think, here pretty soon. But before we get to that, the Raiders got fined $500K. John Gruden got fined $150K after Trent Brown's positive COVID test and all those things surrounding it. The Raiders, of course, got a warning earlier in the season for not wearing masks during the game. Shane, I'll go to you first here. What are your thoughts on the NFL expanding on the fines? And also, let's not forget that the Raiders also lost a 6th-round pick in this fine as well.
So they got fined just because Trent Brown got COVID?
And like all the stuff surrounding that. I think there were some issues in terms of hospitalization issues, didn't diagnose them quick enough. I don't remember all the internal details. I don't think a lot of that information is out there. But according to the NFL, there was definitely some unsafe practices.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be more to the story because, I mean, so many guys in the league have obviously gotten it and they haven't really cared. Or, I mean, they have, but the NFL hasn't. When I say that, I mean the NFL
the protocol. Not that. It's that the protocols that they are putting in place, the teams are following in these instances.
Right.
So maybe that wasn't the case with Trent Brown.
I mean, it has to be because, but if they did find them just because he got it, then that's kind of scummy. But yeah, I mean, since this has happened, though, I mean, I'm sure they didn't follow protocols in that case. Shame on them,
Mm-hmm.
Join the Titans in the ranks of teams to not be liked by Brannan Widdis.
Also, I will say that the Titans were fine, but they didn't get a pick violation. They didn't lose a 6th-round pick.
See,
for
that's
all
weird.
Their things. But the Raiders, because they got 2 COVID offenses, they got the 6th-round pick.
I see.
But again, even though it was 2 offenses, the Titans had a pretty terrible outbreak that was not managed correctly.
But they had a much worse situation.
But Brandon, your thoughts on the Raiders fines and how the NFL is sort of treating this whole situation?
I think it's a little weird, like that they didn't treat the Titans the same way, because like the Titans, they just did not give a crap. I mean,
really didn't.
Like it just.
Nice job censoring yourself.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. It's confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I love how the NFL has handled the protocols, but these fines are definitely strange. I mean, we'll see how much more fines we have as the season goes along. Of course, we're now firmly in the second half of the season. But it was definitely weird to see that they, I believe, got a 6th-round pick, which I think is more important than the fines for them. I have no clue what in terms of details. No one gets that pick. It's just gone. That was same with the Patriots when they lost all their picks.
Well, that sucks for one college player.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some conditional picks that go to other teams. That might also be the case. But yeah, it's just a weird situation. Trent Brown, that was like a whole saga of a situation. He got COVID and then had some other issues where he had to go to the hospital. And then with COVID as well, I know the Jags, one of their running backs, had to be hospitalized multiple times for heart issues due to COVID. So that was pretty sad as well. But so it hasn't been necessarily perfect. And he's out for the year. I think it was Armstead for the Jags, but it hasn't been perfect, but it's worked, I think, better as a whole than I think we expected. So
they're figuring it out.
I think they're always figuring it out as they go.
Yeah.
But it's definitely better than I think we all expected.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying a few weeks ago on the show, I was like, how are they even going to finish the season? You guys are like, well, they'll figure it out one way or another, and they have. So
back to the funny tweets. Juju and James Conner got fined $500K for wearing their socks too low during the game on Sunday.
You mean 5K?
Or 5K, excuse me. It says specifically your socks or your stockings failed to cover your lower leg. And James Conner also got fined that same amount. I didn't know. I knew about the sock violation, but I didn't understand why you would get fined for it. I thought that you would get a warning first for it. It just.
Who even cares? Your damn sock. It's not like it's your. Oh, you weren't wearing your helmet correctly. Yeah, I fined him for that. But your sock was too short. Well, who cares? Can't a guy breathe a little with his legs? Yeah.
Brandon, your thoughts on this mess?
It's honestly one of the dumbest things I've heard in football. Just like what? Who cares about it?
The NFL's just getting greedy. They just want more and more money.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, who cares about your socks?
Nobody in college does that. I mean, honestly, what's the point? Like, it's not like it's some safety thing. Who cares?
I think their approach is that it's a safety thing. I have to read through this more closely.
Yeah, but how is that a safety thing?
Items, cover the entire area below the knee. And they prefer, oh my God. The most amazing, I'm just skimming through the policy, right? And this is unnecessarily too long. And honestly, it honestly feels like a legal document for socks, which I don't understand. I also don't get the point of why they cannot be altered to fit the player's preferences. That's weird. Uniform laws. Yeah, that is so weird. I would imagine that they should appeal this, and I think they probably will. It's just, oh my God. I probably need to read the document more thoroughly when we have these kind of topics because it does say stuff. But anyway, this was pretty confusing anyway, since all the highlighting. But definitely something they should go to the appeals court for. But I can't believe that you would have to appeal sock wearing. That's just bizarre.
Of all things.
Of all things that the NFL needs you to appeal or would have you appeal. So Bill Belichick gave a response to the Patriots' recent struggles by saying, we sold out and won 3 Super Bowls. That's literally what he said earlier this week. We sold out and won 3 Super Bowls. Brandon, your reaction to Bill Belichick's comments?
Well, what the hell does he mean by sold out?
It means that they put all their assets into winning Super Bowls right away.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, if you have a great. I mean, that's what most teams would do, wouldn't they?
When they have a great quarterback.
I mean, it sounds like he's trying. He's like, oh, trying to defend himself or something, but like, I don't see anything to defend.
Shane, do you see anything to defend here?
No, I mean it's kind of a weird comment to just to just randomly make, but you know,
I
guess.
I actually have a problem with this comment, and here's why. I believe that they didn't sold out to win 3 Super Bowls. I really don't believe that because, as we've talked about, I mean, he's talking about for the last 5 years, or probably since the decade with the 3 Super Bowls. That team, the last half of Tom Brady's run when he won those 3 Super Bowls, those teams weren't that good.
No,
they weren't. It's not like they brought in a bunch of star players to build around Brady. Draft pick wise, they drafted terribly. That's a huge reason why they're in the position they are in now. But like, they traded badly. I mean, obviously this is more recent, but a 2nd-round pick for Mohamed Sanu, who's literally taking tryouts right now, for teams. But like, they didn't really sell out. They didn't really give him great receivers over these last 3 Super Bowl runs. They didn't really have. They still had a top defense, but only last year did it really kind of pop out. But it's just like this idea that they made like a super team and sold out like it's like the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant is just not accurate whatsoever. Those teams weren't even that great. It was just sort of the system. And honestly, I could see people making the argument that it was more Brady than anything, considering how well he's been at Tampa and how bad Belichick's been now. But obviously that has a lot to do with how the team is built now as well in New England. But again, this idea that it was sold out is kind of bizarre because even with all the Super Bowl teams, we didn't really think they were necessarily the best team in the league in terms of roster quality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. But, you know, it's interesting you say that about, you know, Brady and Belichick and how they've performed in their new situations. And, you know, the biggest question that was on all of our minds was, you know, who's going to win this divorce, so to speak?
I would say divorce is the right term for this.
Yeah. Brady or Belichick. And, you know, it was a matter of who, you know, is Brady actually just good, or is it that Belichick really elevated him? And I think we're starting to see now that it's more the former than anything. Because you look at Belichick's record without Brady, before him and now, it's not that good. I mean, he's not even over 500. And it's, you know, I mean, it's not like Cam is that bad of a quarterback necessarily. I mean, he's not great anymore, but you know, he still makes good plays. He still, you know, he can still be effective, but they just don't they don't look good at all.
My overarching argument here is that let's just look at the receiving core. Let's just go there. I mean, the last couple years with New England, Brady was extremely frustrated with how the receiving core is. Look at what he has in Tampa, right? So, I mean, you got to understand that. But, like, even now, like, even in Brady's latter years, even in those Super Bowl runs, those teams, you could even make the argument, were severely depleted for what Brady needed. Severely depleted, especially last year, even though it wasn't a Super Bowl year. But, like, and now with Cam, like, this is something that we haven't even talked about, but, like, his number one target is who? Jacoby Myers right now? Like, there's nothing there. And you could, and I mean, look, if you're Belichick, that's kind of why you would make the sold out argument. But I would make an argument that the receiving core that they've had over the last, let's say, 3 Super Bowls in New England haven't even been that good other than Edelman. So what do you want me to say if you want to just pinpoint that, for instance?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think that Edelman is pretty underrated. I mean, he's not like a top 10 guy by any means, but yeah, I think he's definitely capable of being a good wide receiver one. But that's it. I don't think he can carry a whole receiving core like he has been. You know what I mean? Because he's really a slot guy at the end of the day. He's not, but they're asking him to be, like some deep threat and all this other stuff, but he's just not really. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. I mean, they definitely need at least one more good receiver. Two would be nice though. A more consistent passer and a tight end.
Would two, let's say, quality receivers, like on the boundary and the perimeter, I should say, help Cam Newton in this offense?
I mean, I would think so, because he just needs more guys he can trust, more places to go to, because he doesn't really have anything right now. So, it's. I mean, I assume they're gonna draft somebody, but
they drafted N'Keal Harry 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know, but knowing them, I don't know. They don't do well in the draft usually, so I don't know.
I'm still a N'Keal Harry believer. Brannan, your thoughts on where the Belichick-Brady divorce stands currently?
I think Brady is winning. That is all.
That's it. That's it for you on there.
Although Brady is, I think it helps him tremendously that he is in an organization like Tampa, where
that
he has
actually wants to help Brady,
where he has so many weapons, to end in a pretty good defense. And even then, he's still only 5-2. It's not like they're undefeated or something. So I don't know.
They're just giving Brady what he wants. They're making him very comfortable, even though he can get frustrated on a lot of those national TV games. That's something to keep in mind for this game as well. Look at the Patriots, or excuse me, not the Patriots, the Buccaneers during national TV games. They are not the same team. So that's something to keep in mind for this one. Maybe Antonio Brown changes that.
Yeah, I saw this funny meme. It was like, it said Tom Brady is like Nick Fury in Tampa Bay assembling the Avengers with or Bruce Arians or somebody.
Yeah. To finish off our NFL stuff for today, Richie James of the losing side of that Thursday night game for the 49ers, he popped off in fantasy 33.4 fantasy points using ESPN standard PPR. He is our MVP for Thursday Night Football this week. Let's move on to the NBA, and we'll even get to the NHL as well, as we got some updates for the restart or the official start of their 2020-2021 season. The NBA season has been approved to start on December 22nd, of course, accommodating for the Olympics and for the 2021-2022 season to begin on time. The NBA and NBA PA are planning to discuss how to open free agency quickly after the draft, which the draft is coming up. We're coming up on November 18th, which will be an NBA draft. Again, we talked about how this draft is honestly pretty terrible, which honestly might make for some entertainment, not only now, but down the line for these prospects. But we might get to that more next week. Training camps are supposed to start on December 1st. And again, they're still negotiating the new CBA. We'll see if they do the force majeure clause. The force majeure clause, I think, is in every CBA for every league, which basically says things like natural disasters, or in this case, a pandemic. The owners can say, hey, we're terminating the CBA. We're going to renegotiate, which could happen here. So they still have to figure out what the CBA looks like, or if they enact the force majeure clause. It's been a rocky road there so far for the NBA as they have pushed that deadline constantly. I would imagine that is due to the election, though. So we'll see. But Brandon, I'll go to you, and I want to specifically talk about one team in particular, the champions, the Los Angeles Lakers. How do the Lakers with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, how do they approach even the Heat as well? We can talk about them also. How do they approach this December 22nd start with such a quick turnaround from, winning the championship literally 3 weeks ago or playing in the championship with the Miami Heat to now starting up on December 22nd? How do both of those teams approach that, particularly the Lakers?
I actually would argue that they would have a little bit of an advantage because, like, they'll have. Yes, they've played the most, right? But they've also played with their teammates the most recent. So, in a way, having a season start soon after ending, they maintain a lot of what they built during the season.
I will say there's a caveat there. For the Heat, you're correct. But for the Lakers, their bench is going to be completely different.
Oh, that's true.
Because Rondo's gaining a lot of interest from the for the Clippers, for instance. Their bench is going to be much different this year than it was last year. So for the Heat, I think you're right. Pat Riley has been very open about keeping this roster together, but for the Lakers, not as much. So how does that change your approach for the Lakers?
Yeah, I think the Lakers will have a harder time then. I think the teams I think you're going to see a lot of teams kind of try and stick together. I don't think you're going to see a ton of moves this offseason. Mm-hmm. But it'll be interesting. I mean, I for one am excited. December 22nd, just a couple days before Christmas.
Yeah. A couple things before I go to Shane as well. This free agency, Brandon's right. It's going to be very weird. We'll see how the contracts look and all that. This is not enticing free agency. It could be very slow. And it is also interesting that the trade rumors have been remarkably slower than usual for the NBA. That could be a good thing, though. We'll see I believe on draft night how that looks. But Shane, if you're the Lakers, how do you approach starting so quickly?
I mean, I look at it. It's like, we got the ring. Okay. If we don't get another one this year, it's not the end of the world, right? I mean, it's not like
LeBron's running out of time, though, to catch up with MJ. You would think you would need a couple more to really solidify that spot.
Well, that's his problem.
It is.
I mean, it's more than just about him. That's at the end of the day.
That is true.
They got a whole because they got a team that's relatively old for basketball. I think they're really gonna, even more so than last year, they're really gonna put their faith in AD, who's the guy that's young and hot on that team. And I feel like they're going to get off to a bit of a slow start in the first month, just kind of, because I feel like they're still going to be kind of, resting and relaxing after the craziness that was last year.
Especially LeBron. I don't think LeBron's going to play much, particularly in the first month.
Yeah. Just because, they don't want to risk injury or anything or whatever. And the fact that, he spent 4 or 5 months in that bubble away from his family.
It was 93 days.
Was it?
For the Los Angeles Lakers, I believe.
Well, because they got there in like the middle of July, right?
Beginning of July.
Or beginning of July.
Something like that.
September, October. Oh, yeah, I guess it's about 3 months. Okay, anyways. He spent 3 months away from his family, which is, that's still a really long time.
It was a huge mental health thing for all the players.
Yeah. So, I imagine he's kind of like, well, not just him, but everybody, they're kind of like, we really want to play right now? I kind of want to just relax for a minute with my family and friends, but duty calls. So that's it should be. I don't know. It should be interesting. I mean, I imagine Miami, because they're a lot younger and they, I feel like they got something more to prove. After coming so close to winning a title this year.
Expectations are going to be higher.
Yeah, and I feel like they're going to be putting a lot more pressure on themselves because it's like we got to make up for not winning last year, so we got to get out there and do this. You know what I mean? So it's like I feel like they're going to come out and be really fired up, but then kind of tire themselves out in a way.
Mm-hmm. I think with Miami, it's going to be interesting because they're in a spot where the bubble was weird anyway. Not to dismiss the Lakers title. We're not doing that. They deserve the title fair and square. But it was a weird playoffs, particularly in the East, for Miami to get where they got. They're still in a semi-building position here. Whereas I don't know if Pat Riley and Spoelstra know that currently. So it could be a wake-up call halfway through the season in the trade deadline, but it could also be important in terms of what is the moving and shaking pieces. Miami is clearly going to be a top suitor for Giannis going into 2021.
The place I said he would go to.
Well, at least they are interested. At least they're going to be pursuing that. Brandon, I'll go back to you to finish off the NBA stuff, and I want to talk about Golden State. Now, Golden State has the number 2 overall pick. You could look at a guy like James Wiseman. They're also interested in, Devi Avi, I believe the Israeli, or I forgot what country he's from. But he's also gained a lot of interest for the Warriors. How do the Warriors approach this offseason to get to a point where they can be back in contention? Obviously, we don't know about Curry and Clay and their injuries, but they're clearly a team everyone's really excited to watch back at full strength. How do you feel about them going into this shortened season?
The Golden State Warriors, I think, are going to be a team that won't have much trouble this year. Personally, I think that because I think they're a team that kind of the only reason they sucked last year was because all their players got hurt, or all their players everybody cares about got hurt, which in this case is Clay and Steph. You bring them back. I don't know how well. It'll be interesting to see if Steph Curry is starting to enter his second phase of his career, where every basketball player inevitably gets to at some point, where they lose a little bit of their shot and they are just a little bit worse than they were when they started. But I think they'll be still pretty good.
Mm-hmm. With Golden State, I think also one of the things I'm interested in is how does Wiggins' role change a little bit in this offense? Is Wiggins on the trade block? There's been rumors with him as well. But the Warriors, I don't know. I think I need the first month of the season to really figure them out. Because I want to see how Steph and Clay. You're right, Brandon. Like, could this be a different stage, not only for Steph but also for Clay as well? That could be interesting. Shane, really quickly, your thoughts on the Warriors?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think he's probably entering more of the, I guess, like the, like where LeBron is now, where he's still good, but he's not like the guy. He's more of a, like a leader, mentor figure. And then, they get a younger guy coming in there who's, putting the lights out, making all the great plays and everything. Not that he's still not that he's gonna just all of a sudden not be that good. I mean, he's still great, obviously. But I think if they can take advantage of their draft pick and then bring in like their next kind of like star, I think they could end up being kind of like a Laker team like this last year with like LeBron as or with Steph as like the LeBron, and then a new guy, and then Klay Thompson being kind of that the third guy, if you will. So
this is going to be really important. This draft for the Warriors are going to be really important, not only for their short term, but their long term. If they get this pick right, if they get a star, even a solid starter, it actually changes their fortunes tremendously. But who knows? They might also trade the pick as well. Moving on to the NHL, we got an update for their start for next season. Some rumors came out this week that some owners suggested skipping this next season due to the pandemic. Multiple owners have argued the NHL will be better off financially if it shuts down next season instead of playing in empty arenas. They're still developing plans currently, but there's disagreement on whether it's all worth it. So multiple owners, again, argued it might be better financially to shut the season down. The commissioner, Gary Bettman, has disagreed with this mindset, claiming it would make more long-term damage to the sport. If you remember, what was it, 2010, Brandon, you might be able to help me with this. What was it, 2010, 2011, when they had their lockout? Actually, they might have been.
I think it was 11.
I think it was like 11 or 12, same time as the NBA lockout.
Yeah.
And how much it hurt their season because they were off for so long. And then, though there could be a shortened season, league sources report that 48 games will be an absolute minimum. This is from ESPN's Emily Kaplan, excuse me. So, Brandon, your thoughts on where the NHL is at in their negotiations with owners saying we might not want to play, but Bettman vehemently disagreeing. Where do you think the NHL is at currently?
I think the NHL will end up playing, because if they don't, I think the NHL is honestly is the most precarious sport in terms of the national. Just because it's a sport that it's kind of at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of the national sports. I think it kind of goes football, basketball, baseball, hockey, that people pay attention to. So
Canadian revenue is also important there, and that's another piece with this that is going to be very difficult for the NHL compared to all the other leagues. It's even going to be difficult for the MLB and the NBA with them kind of trying to figure out the Blue Jays. It seems like the Blue Jays are going to go back to Buffalo next year. And then we'll see what happens with Toronto. There's interest, Kentucky there. With the Raptors, maybe Kansas City. Who knows with that? But it's a much different situation with the amount of Canadian teams that are in the NHL.
Yeah, I could see, honestly, it'll be interesting to see where they end up, because it kind of bums me out that Seattle doesn't have their arena built yet, because it could have been a good sign for Seattle getting a team if Toronto had ended up back here.
Right. But also, let's also, with the NHL piece of it, how do they approach that? Because it's even more of a struggle when you have how many Canadian teams they have in that league now? 6?
In the NBA?
Oh, no, in the NHL.
Toronto, Edmonton,
Vancouver,
Calgary, Vancouver, Montreal,
Ottawa.
Yeah, there's 8, I think. Isn't there 8? There's 7 or 8. So
how do you manage that?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's going to be a struggle for them.
I think you might have to split the. I don't know.
I really don't know how they're going to make that work. So that's going to be a massive challenge for them on top of all these other things. And then finally, we didn't get to this last week because we had a lot of topics to cover in such a short amount of time. But I did want to get to Khabib's retirement. Khabib Nurmagomedov retired. What is it now? 29-0. Your thoughts on Khabib's career, Brandon, and where you rank him on your GOAT list?
He'll be back.
Your thought is he'll be back for 30-0.
He'll be back.
Is it going to be GSP?
He's not going to walk away from. Dana's going to find him. Is going to get a super fight to end it. and I think it'll be too enticing for him not to come back for that 30-0.
Is it GSP?
I don't know if it'll be GSP because I feel like GSP's been out for too long.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I could see it being Connor v. Khabib round 3 to end it.
You think Khabib wants to fight Connor in his
you know,
retirement fight?
I do. I think Khabib would love to put Connor on his ass one more time and walk out. Just like, I'm out. I've beat him every time.
As it stands right now, currently, where's Khabib on your GOAT list?
Well, are we talking about in his weight class?
No, all time.
Oh, God.
Pound for pound.
Tough.
Pound for pound. He's in the top 5 pound for pound.
Well,
if
yeah,
this is official.
I mean, he's top 5, but there's so many, like, I guess, well, GSP is probably my one.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
GSP's, I arguably could say GSP 1, Khabib 2.
DC, where's John Jones on your list?
Oh, fuck, no, no, John Jones, no.
Because here's the thing.
My top 5 is that, here's my top 5, right? It goes GSP, Khabib, DC, Bisping.
Okay, Bisping.
And then Connor.
Mm-hmm.
That's my top 5.
I'm pretty close with that list. I mean, you gotta add a couple of the guys from the older eras. So I don't know, the Iceman, Chuck Liddell would be there if we really want to go deep pound for pound. So that's kind of what makes it tough for me on the spot. I know probably tough for you as well, but I think he's top 5. But the hardest part for me is that I wish his career went on like another 10 more fights, because if it did and he kept dominating the way he has, there would have been no question he would have been at the top of the GOAT list.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, Khabib's fight, this last fight he did, he literally just like walked in, did his thing, left.
I love watching Khabib because of his ground game. I mean, it's just, you worry about his top game so much, but his top game is even really good. But it's like the ground game is, I've never seen anyone in history perform that well on the ground.
Yeah.
It's just, he finishes fights so quickly. It's amazing. But happy retirement, Khabib, if it is the end. I don't know. Fighting's a weird sport in that sense.
They always come back.
They really always come back. Yeah.
at least once or twice.
Yeah. And that is it for today. Thanks for a great show, guys. And we'll see you all on Sunday for the post show, as we always do. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks, Brandon. Yes. Thanks, Shane. Good show as always.
Thank you.